And now it is time to meet our featured speaker. She co-founded the Billions Institute with her friend Joe McCannon to answer one question: how can we engage 1 billion people to solve the world's biggest problems over the next 50 years? She is also responsible for creating the Skid Row School, which trains foundation and nonprofit executives how to effectively design and run large-scale change initiatives. Prior to that, she led the 100,000 Homes campaign that mobilized 186 cities to house 105,000 people off the streets in just 4 years. That's pretty impressive. Please give a warm welcome to Becky Margiotta.
Good evening, y'all. First, I want to just appreciate the generosity of our friends at the Weinberg Foundation. Since I've been in town about 24 hours, every conversation I've had starts with, those are the most generous people. And that has been my experience as well with Rachel and Craig and Yvonne and Amy. And can we just give them a round of applause for their generosity for a moment? Thank you. I also want to acknowledge someone very special to me in the audience, which is my godmother, Sister Sharon Canis, who's known me before I was born. If you ran into her in the lobby, she probably told you that. And been a real influence in my life. So if I say anything that's at all useful today, I would say there's at least 50% odds that it's something that my Aunt Sharon taught me. And if what I say today is total garbage, I think that's on me. So we'll see how it goes, all right? So I turn 50 in a few months, and I might be a midlife crisis. I'm not sure what it is, but I've just been thinking a lot of what am I doing? What am I doing here? Is it helpful? Is it useful at all? Is it making a difference? And the other night, I was tucking my 4-year-old son into bed, and they call me Boo. Long story. I don't really resonate with mom or dad, so they call me Boo. And Huck was sucking his thumb, holding his monkey, and I was like snuggling him close, and he looked at me and he said, "Boo, I hope you live long enough to meet my kids someday." And I was like, "Me too, Huck, me too." But, well, I really wonder what kind of world we're going to be leaving to Huck and his little sister Vivian. And you know, I didn't even really want kids. I hope this isn't a video of this, they don't see it, it's just between us. But like, I'm the oldest of 7 kids. And I babysat a lot, and my wife is 9 years younger than me. My biological clock never ticked, and hers was like ticking, and she was like, "We're having kids," and I was like, "Christine, it's going to be like permanent babysitting," and she was like, "It's not that way when it's your own kids," and I was like, "You don't know that. You don't know that for sure, right?" I thought that was the whole perk of being gay, right? So like I'm dating myself as a lesbian because like lots of gay people do that now, but like I was back in the fanny pack days, you know, and all that. And so I got to be honest, like I feel a little bit bitter because there's something no one told me about being a parent. And the thing that nobody told me about being a parent was how much you worry about your kids, right? Oh, I feel teary about it. Or how much you're going to love them, right? And I worry about them all the time, about school shootings and about, if they're going to bump their heads. They do every day. They find new ways to hurt themselves, or if they're going to get, addicted to drugs or alcohol. And I'm not just making this up, right? Like I'm friends with Nicole Hockley from Sandy Hook Promise, who lost her 5-year-old. And one of my family members is just finishing up rehab for drug addiction, right? This is not just just wild ideas of worrying, right? I worry about climate change. Don't get me started. Let's see it afterwards. I got a long list of worries about climate change, and no one told me about that. Now that I'm mom, I'm in this like secret mom club where I worry about everybody else's kids too, right? And I like every day I think about the kids who've been separated from their parents at the border, and I feel sick about it, right? And whenever there's a shooting or something, I'm like, oh, their mom, right? Like I just feel this connection that I wasn't expecting. I kind of like, I bite my nails and I wring my hands a lot. It's quite dreadful, actually. And I think of this quote from E.B. White, Charlotte's Web, the dude that did Charlotte's Web, and he had this quote. He says, "When I wake up in the morning, I can't decide whether I want to save or savor the world, and it makes it hard to plan my day." And before I had children, I would wake up in the morning and I'd be like, "That's right, EB, what are we gonna do today? You know, we're gonna save or we're gonna save, what's it gonna be?" But now that I have kids and I worry so much, I think that EB, like there's a third option, which is just curl up in a ball in the fetal position and go back to sleep, right? And so, but we can't go back to sleep, right? We can't go back to sleep, and you can't go back to sleep, and I can't go back to sleep. And I think if we're gonna save or save the world, I wanna make a case here that we in this room are the people who are here to save the world. And like, I'm not just saying that. Like, I actually mean really we need to save the world. So about a couple weeks ago, I read a New York Times piece. I wish I could say I heard it on NPR, because I think that has even more credibility, but that most of the world scientists agree we've got about 20 years to get our act together, or climate change will be irreversible. Which means turning our economy the world economy on a dime to get off of fossil fuels. And I will get started a little bit on climate change, right? Like, so what does that mean for jobs, infrastructure, transportation, houses, all these different things? And that's just the beginning, because if sea levels go up, then that means there's going to be more like malaria and like water types of diseases. So people of you working on health, there's like whole different things. I heard that in the melting of the tundra, there was some deer that had smallpox, or like diseases that have been eradicated can be unleashed in the melting of the tundra. So like I said, don't get me started. And then the displacement of literally millions of people who are living along where, when the sea levels rise, we're in big trouble. And I don't think that that's gonna be, like, oh great, let's just move people. Like right now, we have a couple hundred people who are escaping violence in Latin America, and we're greeting them with a military, right? So the violence that can come from this is stuff like, are y'all worried with me now? All right. But I look at you, and I do think there are those of us who are weavers, and what we're doing is we're weaving together the web of life, and we're repairing it where it's broken. And I think all of us in this room are doing this, and that it's our job to save the world. And I know you're looking at me and you're like, me? I just have my little nonprofit, And yeah, you, exactly you. The nonprofit sector, it's $1 trillion contribution to the United States economy. It's the third largest sector after manufacturing and retail. We are mighty. There are a lot of us. There's a whole bunch of us, and if we add ourselves up, we're actually a mighty force. And to whom much is given, much is asked, right? So we're gonna save the world, yeah? Y'all with me? You down? All right. Okay, Becky, what do we do? That's another question. I'm not sure. I'm actually really not sure what we need to do, but I have a couple things I want to share with you. I have the real privilege of training people from all over the world who lead nonprofits and foundations in how to design and run large-scale change. So they have something that works somewhere for some people, and their foundations are willing to invest more, but they're like, you need to scale, that thing is amazing, and they call me, say, Becky, I need your help scaling. So I've worked with 500 leaders, every sector, human trafficking, anti-gun violence, healthcare, education, racial justice, the cat ladies, I'll talk about them in a minute. I've worked with like every sector from every continent except Antarctica, and I have the privilege of training them. I can't believe they even show up, honestly, but I'm learning from them too as well. And what we teach them is this space I call the intersection between personal and planetary transformation, which is also grandiose, I acknowledge, but the planetary transformation is in getting your mindset to think big enough about how can you get this thing to work to everyone who benefits, and there's strategies and tactics, and that part to me is kind of easy. Then there's the personal transformation of who are you to do this work, and how do you show up every single day, and that you're the thing that's gonna make it not work. It's you, right? Like you're the one who's gonna sabotage it. And I've seen that again and again and again. There's brilliant ideas, but it gets sabotaged by our human limitations, by our egos and those things, right? So I work with people where those things come together. And I don't have any answers, but I have 3 questions for you to consider in your weaving together of the web of life. The first one that I'll offer you, and this is what I ask all the people who come to my trainings, is what are you not seeing? What are you not seeing or facing? So I'll share a quick example of that. I had the privilege of being interviewed by Anderson Cooper for the 60 Minutes piece. And he is as good-looking person as he is on TV. My communications director picked me up at the airport, and he's like, "I'm not gay, but if Anderson asked me to make out, I totally would." And I was like, "I'm sure that's high on Anderson's list, Jake." Okay. And so, when he was interviewing me about our work with Nashville, they were getting people off the streets. He asked me again and again and again, "Do those people really deserve housing?" You know, and I went back to my prisoner of war training, and I knew I had to redirect, right? I felt like that was bait, and I knew that it was all the people who were watching the show were going to be asking, "Did those people deserve housing?" And what I did in the moment was a sort of a redirect, a twist, where I said, I don't think it's about deserving or not. I actually think it's about what's in all of our best interest, and it costs more for us to keep someone on the streets than it does to house them. And Anderson was like, "Okay, all right. And then let me ask it again another way." And it was really, he kept coming at it like that. And I had had years and years of people asking me exactly that question, so I felt prepared for it. But I actually really regret that answer now, right? Because kind of implicit in that answer was that you can put a dollar figure on a human life, and you can't, right? It sort of answered the mail, but it's not the right answer. Because I think, like, the real redirect, if I could get a do-over, would be, do you deserve your mortgage income tax deduction? Right? Right? And do I deserve mine? I get a mortgage income tax deduction. I promise you, it's more than a Section 8 voucher would cost, right? So thank you for subsidizing my housing, by the way. Really appreciate that. But our framing in the social sector is off a lot of the time. I could tell you many other stories, but I'll tell you at our training, we have one pre-reading for people who come to our school. And the title's a little alarming. It's Heteropatriarchy and the 3 Pillars of White Supremacy. Drop mic, right? So it's written by Andrea Smith. She's a Cherokee intellectual, feminist, and anti-violence activist. And she says, like, look, everyone says, like, we should have these multiracial coalitions, and we should, but what we have to acknowledge first is that the way the structures have been set up is that we've hurt each other. We haven't all been treated the same, and we've been used against each other, and we have to heal first, right? And so she draws these 3 pillars of slavery and capitalism and how those have worked together, and then colonialism and genocide, and then othering and war. And she said, I tell you, when I read it, I was depressed for at least a week, because I was like, oh, this is exactly what's happening, and what do we do about this? It's everywhere. So what we have our participants do is map what they are working on to which pillar are you working on. Connect the dots. Connect the dots all the way to capitalism, slavery, genocide, colonialism, or othering and war, or heteropatriarchy, which is kind of this catch-all, if you're not sure which, right? And you know what? Just the first time I did this, I was like, oh, I can't believe I'm having to read this, because this is really, this is provocative material. And they all did it. They could all map what they were doing back to those things, but we don't talk enough about these underlying systems and structures. And we put a lot of attention focusing on the people or the victims of these things. And what I want to just offer is to turn that spotlight also to the systems and the structures that are creating. We all have jobs because of these systems and structures have collateral damage, right, if nothing else, right? And so the more that we can point our energy back to these systems that are creating that harm, we can begin to dismantle that harm too. And that's hard work too. So is the other work. My mentor, Heather Hackman, encouraged me to follow the 30-70 rule. You spend 30% of your energy putting Band-Aids and 70% of your energy stopping the bleeding, right? But you have to do both, right? I think, I'll just say charity, I think, is necessary but insufficient, and to save the world, we've got to go for justice, right? And to do that, we have to see what we're not seeing. And it's like the movie The Matrix, when Morpheus tells Neo, you can't see the Matrix yourself, someone has to show it to you. We have to be willing to see what we can't see with our own eyes and help each other see those things, right? So that we can actually get ahead on these things. I know it's overwhelming and daunting, and I just want to offer some words of wisdom from the Talmud. Do not be daunted by the enormity of the world's grief. Do justice, love mercy, walk humbly. You're not obligated to complete the work, but neither are you free to abandon it, right? So, we got... Our work is important, and we're not free to abandon it, right? Let's get to it. Which gets to my second question. What are you doing? No, really, like, what do you do? And you'd be surprised at how hard that is for people to answer. So people call me, and they're like, hey, Becky, I got a scale. I ask them 3 questions every time. First one is, what's your thing? You have something you do that makes things better for people. What is it? Now, that is usually a very long answer that has like this bell and that whistle and right? Because we fall in love with our ideas and our program models. And I'm like, okay, cool, get to the point. Okay, oh, that's your thing. You basically do this? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, okay. Question 2. How many people are currently benefiting from your thing, whatever it is? And most people kind of know that. Some people only have to like really keep track of that once a year when they turn in their report to the foundation or the board, right? But most people are like, 100, 1,000. They know within an order of magnitude they have something correct. The third question, how many people are there in the world who could possibly benefit from your thing? And then I see them like Googling, like they've never asked themselves that. You'd be amazed at how rarely people ask themselves, what's full scale, right? And that's where for me, it's a matter of, it's a moral issue. If you have something that works really awesome in your neighborhood, wherever you are, then I believe we're morally obligated to get that to everyone who could benefit. And incrementalism isn't going to get us there, right? Or organizational thinking versus solving the problem thinking isn't going to get us there. One of my first clients at the Billions Institute was a large public housing agency where people were shooting each other in the stairwells, and they were concerned about this, and they brought us in to try to help. And so, they're shooting people in the stairwells. Like, moms are like burying their kids, and I said, so what's your aim then? What would you like to get? What would you like to? How much by when to reduce the deaths in the public housing? And they said, oh yeah, we have that. We want a 10% reduction over the next year. And I literally, this was like the mayor's office, and I was like, and my business partner turned white, he was just like, and I was like, come on now, incrementalism isn't going to get us there, right? We don't have time for incremental change anymore, right? So we encourage people to think in 5x, 10x terms. It comes from industry that any system can withstand an expansion of 5 to 10 times over the same period of time, right? So if you follow the rule to 5x to 10x, and you know how many you're working with now, and you know how many there are, you can 5x, 10x your way to everybody, actually, in maybe 15, 20 increments, right? And so we want people to work in 3-year increments. You don't want to kick it to the next administration, 18 to 36 months. And people stop themselves from going big and doing those things, mostly because they believe they need the money first. It's like, yeah, we got this great idea, but we need $3 million. I'm like, no, you don't. You'll need some money, but you don't need $3 million to get started, right? So there's these mindsets where we keep ourselves small and before going to scale. And I get started and raise the money at the same time, right? And the key question for me, and until I hear an answer to this, it's word, word, word. Did you ever see that cartoon where it's like word, 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 treat, word, 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 treat, right? Until I hear how much by when, then I know you're not serious. When I hear how much by when, okay, now I know you're serious, right? And so part of my work is in helping people get to that how much by when, and I really want to encourage you to land on how much by when and risk failure, right? Risk not quite succeeding, but put that out there. And I know all of this is introducing a sense of urgency, and when we are in a place of time, we can get scared. And another quote that I really love is Gary Snyder's quote. He said, we must act as if our hair is on fire and as if we have all of the time in the world. And we live in those paradoxes, right? In our sector, we live in that sector. I think our hair is on fire. I think the world is on fire, right? I think it's a dumpster fire, right? It's a fire, right? We've got a big fire. And where we go astray is when we believe that we have to do it all by ourselves. That's where people mostly go wrong. This is my third question for you. Where is your ego getting in your way? Now, when I shared this and was practicing this with my wife was like, Becky, don't say that. Like, these are, she's like, these people, like, they really believe they're selfless, and they get up every day, and they work really hard, and you're just gonna sit there and be like, what about your ego? And I was like, that's what I'm gonna do. And so, sorry to my wife, and this might be hard to hear, but it all comes down to this in so many ways, right? So, instead of talking about you, we'll talk about my ego, right? And then you can see if you see yourself in any of these scenarios. So the first one is I want to confess that I'm a little bit of a control freak. I come from a long, proud, multi-generational line of control freaks. Aunt Sharon's not one of them, but she knows them, right? She knows them. I think I know my way is best about lots of things. Climate change, how to load a dishwasher. There is a right and a wrong way to load a dishwasher, and I know there's a right way and a wrong way to make a bed. So, my wife would make the bed, and I would just kind of come behind her and straighten things, and she was like, why, you make the bed? And I was like, I'm happy to do that, actually. I have extra energy, and I know that there's a right way, right? So this isn't something we have to disagree about with, right? But when I was working on the 100,000 Homes campaign, we'd go from city to city and do these registry weeks, right? And so what it was Monday, my friend Beth and I would go into a community and train volunteers to go out in the streets and survey all the people sleeping outside from 4 to 6 a.m. And then from 4 to 6 a.m., Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we would go out and interview everybody sleeping out on the streets. Now, I had to get up early because this does not just happen, right? So I'm up at like 3, right, putting glitter in my hair, right? And then Beth and I would do data entry all day, just exhausting, right? And then Friday we would do a PowerPoint presentation to the community of like, here's who's at the highest risk for dying, and maybe you could do something different. And people would like be crying, and mayors would be like pounding, like, we're gonna house everybody. And we would just be like, okay, well, this is amazing, right? Our work is done. And we would just kind of leave. And over 2 years, we went to about 20 cities, taking them through this process, and it was exhausting. And literally, I couldn't pick my head up. I got so tired and so burnt out. My staff were putting pictures on Twitter of me, like, passed out and unable to wake up, and they're like, Becky can't wake up again, you know? And then they thought this was funny, right? And I was completely exhausted. We were in Denver. The next registry week was going to be in San Diego. For the first time ever, San Diego said, we're going to send some people to Denver so we can see what you do so that it'll be easier when you come to San Diego. I was like, that's great. Come on over. But I knew really the only right way to do it was the way that me and Beth knew how to do it, right? San Diego people come. Denver goes fine. I didn't even notice they were there. Show up in San Diego. Oh my goodness. There was like folders with like little, sticky things on them and like lanyards and stations. It was the most organized thing I've ever seen in my whole life. It was better than anything I would have done. And I was like, okay, well maybe you don't need me as much as I thought. And so I asked my friend in San Diego, Jennifer Lazar, I said, hey, could you help me help other people do this so that I don't have to do this so much? Because I'm really tired. And she was like, oh yeah, we just made a binder. Do you want the binder? And I was like, yeah, can I have the binder? And so then it gets worse. So then we're in Albuquerque, and we're like, okay, instead of me and Beth going everywhere, we're just gonna have people come to Albuquerque and see it for a little bit, and then we'll give them the binder and see what happens, okay? So I'm doing the training in Albuquerque, and there's somebody over in the corner sleeping through the entire training, head on desk, jet lagged, and like I would walk by and be like, are they okay? And my friend was like, I don't know, right? So, that happened. Fast forward 2 years, registry weeks are happening all the time, and they're part of this campaign, and we're trying to house 100,000 people. And cities would tell us as they moved people in. And then I get this Google alert one morning, like, Hilo, Hawaii completes registry week for 100,000 Homes campaign. And then I click on it, and there's this beautiful video of a textbook registry week, and I'm watching this, and I'm looking at I'm like, Hilo's not involved in the campaign. They're doing my thing. And they're doing it really good, right? And so I start I find the contact as Brandy, somebody on Hilo, and I call them, and for 2 weeks, she did not return my call. So I'm like, bring, I'm like, hello, Brandy, hi, this is Becky, you're doing my thing. And yeah, can you give me a call? Because I want to count your people you house towards, I have to house 100,000 people? Can I count the ones you're doing, you know? And she didn't, I was not on her radar. She didn't care about Becky, right? Like, she was just like, what are you talking about? So I get her to answer my call. And by then I'm like pissed, right? I'm like, you're doing my thing, you know what I mean? I'm not getting credit for it, right? And so so finally she picks up the phone. I'm like, Brandy, how'd you find out about all this? Oh yeah, I was on Oahu, and I met Sophia, the woman sleeping in the back of the room. She gave me the notebook. And I was like, okay, all right, well, cool. Can we count the people you house? Right? So here's the moral of the story on this. They don't need you. They didn't need me. They just need each other. And we are so in the way, right? And this is not just if you're scaling. This is like if you have a 4-person team, right? And this is something that I hold sacred, that I want to just be like tattooed into the faces of everyone in the nonprofit sector, is with the right conditions, people are capable of solving their own problems, right? And what can we do as leaders in the sector? Our job is to create those conditions within which people can solve their own problems. And that means teeny bit letting go of our inner control freak. And trust me, I know it's not easy because like I have to do it every day, but also getting a little bit ego distant, right? So here's like 3 or 4 ways that this might happen. I shared mine. This is what I say and use sometimes, right? Just so this is like a little mental check here. TM-itis, right? If you've got the thing of like TM, fidelity, intellectual property, blah, 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 you know who you are. You know, you got to do it this way. This is our model. Unless you have like a nuclear reactor, right? Fidelity, you might be overrating fidelity, right? So adapt as you're spreading, as you're getting to everyone who can benefit. Adaptation is the name of the game, and it's not about fidelity anymore. So that TM, to the extent that that's ego-based, right? If you can let go a little bit of that and share, more good is going to happen. The other one, and this is where this is like a shocker, is workaholism, right? I know people work so hard. I see it. I do too, right? I had one leader come through our training, and she was complaining to me that she was up until 2 a.m. every night reviewing. She was an executive director, editing grant proposals that were going to go to foundations. And I was like, don't you have like a team, like a development team? She was like, yeah, but I have to do it. I have to do it myself. I'm the only one who can do it right. You know, and I was like, are you sure about that? Because like you changed glad to happy there, you know? Like, it's just not that big, right? So if you believe you're the only one who can do something, right, you're in the way, right? That's one thing I want to share with you. Anywhere where there's blame or criticism in your life, that's a sign of showing up if you're getting in the way. And some people think that that's what I'm supposed to do as a supervisor. If I don't criticize, it's not going to be done better. Here's my just thing to make your life better. This works with kids, this works with husbands, is replace that, go on a replacement diet and put in its place authenticity and appreciation. And just only do truth-telling and appreciation. What you appreciate appreciates. It works with kids too, I swear. We don't have to put all that energy into criticizing or that type of stuff. And then burdensome reporting requirements, right? Like just spending all this time, like, you know, filling out reports, right? Like it just takes us away from the work. And my favorite that I've seen is the Rakes Foundation. I've been working with them for 3 years, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And once a year, I have to fill out a piece of paper that says, how'd you spend the money? What'd you learn? And I actually look forward to doing it, right? We're still accountable, but what I'm accountable for is how'd you spend the money and what you learn. There's many, many, many more. Tima Okun has a beautiful piece called White Supremacy Culture that like talks about how these toxic ego things show up in our organizational lives and have us getting in the way of the work, right? So I'm not saying you're a bad person if you have these challenges, I do too. I'm just saying maybe the work might be done a little bit better if you get a little bit out of your way and relax and let people shine and create the space where people can solve their own problems. And I'm offering this as a sigh of relief. You do have to save the world, but you don't have to do it by yourself, right? In fact, I don't think you can. So I hope I didn't depress you too much with my worrying. There's still time, but not much, really. I really believe we don't have much time. And we're all terribly connected, right? We're all in Martin Luther King's single garment of destiny, and that's my favorite thing. Our fates are linked. There's no question about it. And so with E.B. White and back, like waking up of whether to save the day, or save the world or savor the world, he frames it as an either or, and I think it's a both and. I think what we're called to do right now is to savor and save the world, right? It does require us unfurling from the fetal position on our couch, but there's unspeakable beauty on this planet and within each and every one of you, and it's our job to weave together this web of life. So I'll close with the great poet Rumi, one of my favorite poems. Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field, and I will meet you there. When the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to talk about. Ideas, language, even the phrase each other doesn't make any sense. The breeze at dawn has secrets to tell you. Don't go back to sleep. You must ask for what you really want. Don't go back to sleep. People are going back and forth across the doorsill where the two worlds touch. The door is round and open. Don't go back to sleep. Thank you for having me here.